All right, welcome back to another episode of Moving to Markham. Today we've got an awesome guest, very special person to the company and to so many people in the community. We have Laura Rusico. Laura's been a realtor on the team for over 8 years. She's been licensed for 10. We've been lucky to take up 80% of her professional time and hopefully a lot more moving forward. And so I just wanted to introduce Laura. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been a while. You've been trying to get me in this chair. I'm
Yeah, I know.
excited.
It's funny because your office is, like, literally right there. We shoot this podcast in our office on Main Street, Unionville, and Laura's desk is literally I can see it through, like, some lighting, but there seems to be a big distance between there and here. I'm glad that you're here.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Tell
so
us a little bit about
let's do
yourself. Yeah,
this.
let's go. So you've been doing this for 8 years. What was the spark? Let's take it back to the beginning. Why did you decide to get into real estate?
Yeah, so right off the bat, I mean, I grew up in a family that was building homes, renovating homes, and I had that kind of firsthand experience just hearing the stories at dinner with my family and seeing, all the work that they did. And I just kind of understand, I think at a really young age, what it was like to build a house, renovate a house, improve something. And I always kind of had a passion for it. It started at that point, and then getting into real estate was something that I knew helping people was something I really wanted to do. And because I had, a passion for homes, for pretty things and home decor and DIY and all that fun stuff. I thought that if I can kind of connect the two, helping people in a area that I'm passionate about would be a great fit. So
Be knocking that out of the park. I mean, when you look at, all the elements of your background with your family and construction, and then your passion for helping people, and then your creativity, which I think is a really underutilized skill set in our industry. I think to be a great realtor, you have to be extremely creative. To be a realtor, you don't have to be creative. To be a great realtor, you need to be extremely creative, especially in a tough market.
yeah. I mean, understanding the real estate market and helping clients that way is for sure an expertise, and I love having or being able to offer that to clients. But being able to also walk into a home and offer insight and look for improvements that maybe somebody else won't see or notice. Yeah, I think they both go so well together, and yeah, I've helped a lot of families that may not be able to see kind of what they can do to a space. So
It's been really cool watching you along this journey as you've really flourished. You started off as a great realtor and turned into an exceptional one over the years. And what I see when we're together and we're like, with a client in front of us, one of the things I love is the fact that you can see something that just looks mundane, something that looks meh, and turn it into something that you can create a vision really easily into what could be. And what's been really cool over the last few years, watching you renovate your home and then start a brand new home built from scratch and then knocking that out of the park and then doing it all over again. It's kind of like you've developed this kind of this proof of concept, this confidence, and you can show people, let me show you what I've done. I'm not just going to tell you what I think. This is my track record of actually doing it.
yeah, yeah, I've learned a lot for sure through the home building process. As you know, my husband and I we build custom homes, and we are on our second one, and I've learned so much in that process that I've learned so much about myself, but I've also learned how to implement that with my clients if they're looking to renovate a home or actually, for example, clients right now looking to purchase a home and possibly build within the next 5 years on that lot. So being able to just like very quickly just see something right after walking in the door and saying, "Okay, this has potential or this does not." So yeah, I've learned a ton through it, and it's been a lot of work, but also very fulfilling and exciting.
It's cool that the things that you're passionate about are also within your profession. So it's not like you're super passionate about, I don't know, fishing, and then you're also a realtor. It's like they're not they're incongruent, and your passion shows. What I'll say about anything you've ever designed, I mean, any of the homes that you've designed or built that I've been through, there's an aesthetic component which is really important, but there's also the function. So you look at form, which is great, and that's what you're turning magazines, and you're saying this is great. But then there's like, where do I put the cereal? Like, oh, what a gorgeous kitchen. It's like no cabinets at the top. And I'm like, what's going on here? Like these people in California, I don't know where they keep their cups because they're all windows in the backyard. I'm like, and you've been able to blend form and function, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, it's really how you utilize the space. I always say like a house doesn't have to be 4,000 square feet for it to feel bright and airy and open and like you're utilizing all the space. It's just about really like positioning things in a way that, like, how would I live in this space, right? Like, how would I put my cups away? If I have all windows in my kitchen, I'm going to do more drawers on the bottom, right? So yeah, you don't have to have something that's so extravagant. You just have to have a bit of a thought process prior to designing anything. And yeah, that's always
Thought process and also a vision, because to be able to anticipate challenges or anticipate problems or mistakes, that's what a professional does. I had an experience this week where we were showing a property and they had done an exceptional job on renovating the kitchen. It was great. It was gorgeous. And I had walked up to the microwave, which was built in, and Wolf appliances, Sub-Zero fridge, like top notch. And the I'm 6'2", and the microwave was about 6 feet off the ground. And I had said to the agent who was present at the showing, I said, "Let me guess, the owners are quite tall." And she goes, "Wow, how did you know that?" I said, "Well, you put the microwave at 6 feet off the ground." My client my client is 5'2". She goes, I couldn't buy this house and keep this as is because I would never be able to see what's inside the microwave. So it's that form and function. Aesthetically, it looked gorgeous being up there. Functionality-wise, like zero, right?
yeah, and I think it's important. I totally agree with you. Like, do things based on how you're going to be living and what's suitable for your needs. But at the same time, like as I'm doing that for my own home, I'm also considering the return on the investment, right? I'm considering what is this resale going to look like? Who's going to walk in here in potentially 5 years, 10 years and say, hey, I could also see myself living here. So yeah, so I always make sure that it's going to work for my family. And then it's also going to work for the market when and if we plan to sell the home.
Yeah, exactly. Like we just recently built a garage on our home. And the home that I lived in, that I live in now, was for sale 50 times and always had a hard time selling because it had no garage. So I saw that as an opportunity. I said, well, I'll buy the home, I'll build a garage, which nobody wants to do, and I'm willing to do the work. And I was pulling out this morning with my daughter. I was dropping her off at school, and she said, "What are you going to do with the rest of the space?" And I said, well, she actually asked, "Why is the garage ceiling so high?" And I said, "Well, we're going to put a lift for a car." And she goes, "But you're not a car guy." I said, "You're right. I don't care about cars. I'm probably never going to put a car on a lift. But in selling the home one day in the future, that's something that will be attractive for potential buyers. So even if I never put a lift, even if I never bring a fancy car in there, somebody that will buy it 30 years from now will say that's a great idea." Yeah. Yeah. Maybe we'll see. Let's check in 30 years and I'll tell you if it worked out. So, before you were working as a professional realtor, you had spent some time working with some politicians, right?
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh, yeah. That's right. Oh my god, it takes me way back. Yeah, this is pre-kids. I worked for the city of Markham. It was the town of Markham at the time. I remember the transition from town to city was when I was there, so that was a big deal. Yeah, I worked for the Ward 4 counselor, which was the Thornhill counselor. That was really cool because I was pretty well hands-on with constituents. So I was the executive assistant to the counselor. So yeah, I learned about like different policies. Do I remember them right now? Probably not. But I learned about some different policies. We were in on all the like committee meetings and really cool experience. Yeah, I got to meet a lot of people. I learned a lot about myself and also working for the city of Markham. Predominantly, most of my business is, York region, but Markham, Stouffville. I got to learn even more about the city. So yeah, it was
I think that that's a cool thing, and you rarely talk about. I brought it up on purpose because I think that there's so much opportunity to blend your experiences working with policy, working with politicians, working with constituents, working with bylaws or asks from the citizens. All those things are what we do right now, which is essentially help people. So that's our constituents. Deal with policy, and that's the real estate market. That's what we're dealing with, and good service, right? Politician wants to get voted, and every time that a client calls you, that's like your vote for Laura for realtor.
yeah, and it was like constantly just maintaining constituents' needs, right? Every email or phone call I saw was what is the need that you need me to help you with? And it is very much the same in real estate, right? Like people are hiring us to help fulfill their needs of needing a new home or expanding their families or whatever the case is. So yeah, there's definitely a huge connection with the two. Yeah.
And then now in terms of, like, present day, I know that you've been able to, I don't wanna say the word master because there's always growth, but in terms of the world of social media, online presence, you've done an excellent job of creating a community with a digital footprint. And I think that that's a super cool thing you've been able to do, which is, I mean, you're a highly, connective person in real life, but to be able to do that syndicated online behind the lens and the planning associated with it. I know when we chat, maybe we're grabbing a coffee in the office and you're telling me about, something that you posted. And there's so much thought and strategy that goes behind it. I think people think you just literally take your phone out and it's just there. And it's actually creates a lot of it requires structure and planning.
For sure, for sure. And a lot of that world comes from, again, rewinding back to helping people. I truly am building relationships through social media. And I remember, when we went through the process of building at first, a lot of my decisions I wasn't confident with. I'm like, is this color going to work? Is this tile going to work? Is whatever the case was. So I knew how I felt in that moment, struggling with ideas and just a confident choice. So now having people come through Instagram and being like, hey, how's your black cabinet? What are the dimensions? Can I do this in my space? I'm able to help people through in that way too. Do you know what I mean? So that kind of fulfills that side to me, and I love the connection piece. I also do have a degree in broadcast journalism, so that's kind of part of my creative realm, right? Like I can definitely be creative in real estate, which is amazing, but that also ties into my creativity. So
Well, broadcast journalism is essentially storytelling. It's the ability or the art of storytelling. And I think that you're excellent at that, which is basically find the entire story. What's the message? What's the real story? What's the headline? And that's a powerful tool.
yeah, and also understanding storytelling too from the other side, right? So I can tell my story, but let's say when I'm with clients at a home and they're telling me why they need to move or why, they're looking for a certain type of product, um, being able to just listen and understand them and know what they want, I'm able to then deliver and find them.
And ask the right questions. What I've noticed when we're together at someone's dining table and they're talking about a move, and we did it just, maybe 2 weeks ago where we're sitting down with a family and you're asking questions. I was like, oh my God, that's such a good question to ask because you get them going.
And I know it's gonna come up, right? When we're seeing the house, I know that that question, even though they didn't ask me, it's in their mind, it's what they're looking for, right? So, yeah, I try to ask as many questions that come to mind on the fly.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think that, a part of our job as a guide in real estate and as a realtor, I think we need to first off allow the client to calibrate internally. So whatever's involved in that household, if it's a single person or a couple or somebody who's consulting with their parents, they all need to calibrate on what they want. That's the first calibration. The second calibration that takes place is we, as a real estate professional, needs to really understand and calibrate with what they want. So household makes a calibration. They know what the target is. Then they share that with us. We understand what they're looking for. And then from there, we go out to the market and we look for what they're looking for, try to achieve the goal they're trying to look for. If we go out there, for example, someone says, I want to buy a home for $500,000 with 4 bedrooms in this school zone. They know what they want. We understand what they want. We're calibrated. Second calibration. Third calibration, we go to the market and we say, nah, doesn't exist. So then we need to go back and recalibrate with the home or household or the homeowners and say, what you're looking for doesn't exist. We need to adjust some criteria. And I think that question asking process that you go through, it helps because if not, they may not calibrate on the right thing, or they may have some gaps in terms of understanding each other.
Yeah, and sometimes they don't even know that that should be a question they have to ask, right? Because they could walk into a home and say, "Oh, like, this has sparked an idea now," right? It's something different than what I thought was possible. If I can tell a quick story, I remember it was actually, the well, a family that lived in the Markham area. They gave me a criteria, and their criteria was they just want a really small either condo townhome. They were downsizing. It was a couple, and they were willing to look in Markham or Stouffville. So we definitely started looking in Markham. I showed them all the inventory of a condo and a townhome of what they were looking for. And then I said, you know what? Can I just show you a completely different product that I think you're going to love? And in my mind, in the back of my mind, I knew that it would still have the feel and look of a condo townhouse. It wasn't going to be too big for them. But it was a semi detached in Stouffville that, do you remember the story? Yeah. So it was a semi detached in Stouffville that I thought, okay, it's less in cost. It's gonna cost less. It's going to be a little bit bigger square footage, but not too big that you can't manage it, right? And it's much prettier than what we're looking at here in a great area, great schools. It was pretty bang on in my mind. So anyways, we took them to see it, and, they were like, "I never thought we would buy a semi-detached," you know? I thought we were gonna be retiring in a condo. So we put an offer and they ended up buying it and got the house. But I just remember that story and it kinda stuck with me because now I'm like, back to asking the right questions, right? Like, if I ask the right questions, even though, they don't understand the idea of a semi-detached, by showing them the product, then maybe something different would work for them and turn into an ideal purchase. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was a great success story, and I know in communicating with them, months and years after they've purchased, they're happy with where they're at. I think that great service starts with great questions. And, I think about my experience going to a restaurant. One restaurant that my kids loved and I hated was used to exist at Markville Mall was the Pickle Barrel because to order, you needed an hour and a half and a university degree because it was like 75 pages of options and it was just overwhelming for me. My favorite experience is when I go to a restaurant, for example, we go to Folco's quite a bit. And what I love is Angie will approach a table and she'll say, "What are you looking for? What do you feel like today?" She says. And so she's listening to what I say, I wanna stay light, but I'm looking for some protein," and she'll make recommendations based on that, as opposed to me just selecting. And I think that a lot of people buying a home will start their search by just thinking they're gonna select, but until you really understand what you're looking for, you're basically at Winners, which another place that drives me crazy. My wife loves Winners and HomeSense because of the variety and like the chance you're going to see something great. My wife loves HomeSense. I know, I get it. It's like HomeSense is great if you're looking for, we say cachibachis, which is like Spanish for knickknacks, and you're looking for something specific. But if you're looking for, a home or something that requires a lot of deep thought, like schools, commute time, property tax, neighborhood, future appreciation, risk that the home was built poorly or like requires a lot of work, all these things, you can't just buy them by searching just like that, clicking. It requires prepared thought so that you don't get distracted by the thing you want most in exchange for the thing you don't want. Let's cut that back. Uh, yeah, so we're gonna say, yeah. So I'm just gonna say, uh, when you're searching for real estate, I'm always reminded of a saying that my family taught me. When we're talking about real estate and you're searching for a home, I always think about the old saying, which is, "Be weary of the exchange of what you want most for what you want now." And a lot of times people will shortchange their future for the instant gratification. Right? So sometimes people will say, "Well, I wanna have fancy countertops and beautiful hardwood floors," but it's a much longer drive to work every day. So to have, for example, an extra bedroom that you don't need, you're gonna be giving up 45 minutes extra every single day in the commute. So that could become very expensive.
For sure, for sure. I always like to do something, what I call window shopping, right, with clients. So, if we do have a client, let's say, that doesn't really know what they want, they just kind of know the area. So I love that first initial showing appointment where I'm like, you know what, let me take the reins. We're gonna see an example of every type of product that's on the market, and we're gonna go and we're just gonna go shopping. And it's funny because I say the word shopping, and all of a sudden they're like, we can go window shopping? I'm like, "Yeah, we don't even have to go into the house. Let's just look at the street. Let's look at the structure of the home. Is this what you want? Do you want a semi-detached? Do you want a townhome, smaller lot?" Let's just look at the different inventory and the type of product. And then once our window shopping is done, now we can narrow it down. And now we can say, you know what? I do want to see more detached. I do want to see maybe I only want to look at condos, right? So, going
Or the opposite, they could say, "I don't see the value in being in a detached. I'm okay with a semi-detached if it means that I'm getting, the square footage I need." Yeah. But I cut you off as you're saying HomeSense.
I'm like, hey, we're talking about homestead.
Why not?
I go window shop.
Yeah. Well, I use a terminology, which is you say window shopping. I call it shopping with your hands in your pocket, meaning we're going to go out, tour properties with no intention whatsoever to buy. And as a matter of fact, I prohibit you from buying anything we see on Saturday. I will not let it happen. I'm not trying to sell you on anything. Another thing that's worth noting, and I know that you and I have the same values in terms of contracts working with clients. Sometimes people will call us and say, "Hey, I'm just curious." And we say, "I appreciate your transparency. We're curious as well." Let's go and see some properties. Doesn't mean they have to come to our office, sign a long contract, and commit to us. Not at all. Zero. Like, let's just go grab some big Starbucks, jump in the car, and shop with our hands in our pocket. No intention to buy. We won't let you buy. You're not allowed to buy, but let's just explore. Because sometimes, yes,
It's the best way to connect with clients too, is, we're taking them to see houses, but we're also, are we a good fit to work together, right? Are we aligned? Do I know what you want? Am I going to be able to offer you what you're looking for, right? So I think, yeah, that's a great opportunity to do that too.
and I love when we're touring properties. I know you ask a lot of questions, and I've noticed almost a strategy of like almost every room you go into, there's a different question. So you walk into, I've seen you, you walk into the primary bedroom and say, is this the right size that you had envisioned? Is this bigger or smaller than your existing bedroom? And then you start to formulate.
Yes. And I would hate for somebody to buy a home that they thought, their furniture did fit in the master bedroom. It's an easy question as an example, right? Can you walk into a space and see your dresser on that wall? Is there a plug there that maybe you wish was on this side, right? So, yeah, I have to ask questions. There's no just unlocking the door and letting people tour, right? We got to educate them at the same time.
For sure. And I think that, our core philosophy within the company is, helping people find a home they'll love. Not just find a home. Any realtor can help you just unlock a door, turn on the light, and then draft a contract. There's not a great complexity or a little ton of skill involved in that. I think finding a home that people will love for years to come, and then there's a ton of value there. And yeah. So, I know we kind of went down a rabbit hole here. I mean, we talked about a lot of things. I mean, a lot of things are happening right now. So we're starting off the new year, 2025. A ton in the news. I mean, yeah. Stay close. Stay close to the mic. Remember? You can do it again. Just keep your chair close, like, try to, remain. Alright. So, we're shooting this. It's the beginning of January 2025. A lot of things on the horizon, a lot of news headlines, and I'm curious in terms of your take on things. I mean, is there anything in the news right now that catches your attention?
Yeah, to be honest, I've been really fixated on the wildfires out in California. Seeing so many people displaced from their homes has been like, I can't take my eyes off of it. So obviously that's a super negative. The positives of it, I'm seeing that so many people are coming forward to offer help, and organizations and small mom and pop shops that are opening up their doors to have people sleep, in their space. And but that's been pretty crazy. I don't know the status as of today. I didn't check this morning, but there's a lot of families that don't have a home. So that kind of hits hard, for me too, just being in real estate, also, loving the space in the home that I'm in, to know that like so many people are just lost, it's very, very sad.
And I think when you look at, for example, an earthquake or like any other natural disaster, flood, earthquake, any other issue, I mean, tsunami, maybe a little more extreme, a hurricane, your house gets damaged, but it's not destroyed. When you look at a fire in your home, like, it's literally start at 0, and, that's devastating, and when I see those things, I have empathy for the families involved. The lesson that I take from it is, am I insured correctly? Am I prepared? If something happened, what would I do? And I think that that's something that it's worth taking a coffee with your spouse to say, what do we need to do? Do we need to keep things in a different place? Do we need to organize things in a way that if we had to grab them quickly, we could?
I was reading an article the other day about a lot of the realtors out there that are, some of them are price gouging. Yeah, so a lot of people looking for rentals, right? And trying to get into temporarily into a home, and the lease prices are climbing. And technically, you're not supposed to do that. It's actually technically against the law. So, yeah, so that was, I don't know, disheartening to see. But
So as we talk about, the impact of the fires in California and the, damage all these fires are creating, I think immediately of insurance. A lot of people ask, oh, so what happens to all of these 12,000, 15,000 homes that have been destroyed? Really, I think it goes on a case by case scenario on how they are insured. Um, the tricky thing about insurance that, it's important to realize is that insurance companies have insurance too. And generally, it's other insurance companies they're buying it from. What does that mean? It means that they're all connected in a web of insurance. And that's their way of diversifying the risk. But I do think that when there's a major insurance claim, like we've seen it locally, Southern Ontario, the ice storms, even floods we've seen over the last couple of years. Even if it didn't affect your house directly, I'm pretty sure it'll have an effect on your property tax. I'm sorry, your insurance premiums, right?
Do you think Trump can actually buy Canada?
I don't know if you can literally buy a country. I don't think that that's in the cards. I've studied Donald Trump for basically my entire life, not because I'm infatuated with him or I love everything he does, but I'm really curious about the guy. And I've read basically every book that Trump has put out. And in the 1980s, he came out with a book called The Art of the Deal. And one of the things that he breaks down is how to negotiate successfully. And the first strategy is understand what matters most to your, adversary in the negotiations and then attack that because people automatically become put on the defensive and it totally, shifts the table in your favor. When we look at Canada, the threats of Canada will be the 51st state that immediately attacks what matters most to most Canadians, which is our identity. And the threat of being forced to become American puts Canadians on the defensive. And you can see in the body language from politicians or people in the news, Canada's not for sale. Okay, of course it's not for sale. But, the idea is that he can now start manipulating our emotions as it comes to tariffs, as it comes to policies, as opposed to what does he want us to do? And that's increase spending on defense, make will break the North American Free Trade Agreement, which was created back, 25, 30 years ago and turned out to be a bum deal for the US in their eyes. So really, I mean, do I think Canada is for sale? No. Do I think the US, can buy it? No. Do I think they could take it if they wanted it? Yes. I don't really know a lot about how countries get taken over, but I've seen it in the news where, you know, countries get taken over. And, I think that that's a bad idea across the board. I think ultimately we are better together and we're a safer continent. We're a safer community.
Okay, so imagine that tomorrow the US buys Canada. How will that change Canadians?
Wow. I think a lot of Canadians that were planning to move to the US will sell their plane tickets or cancel their plans. But joking aside, I think that that would be, uh, you know, in my eyes, would be catastrophic for Canadians in the short term. In the long term, I look at it and say they have a different political system. They have different rules about really important things. For example, possession of arms, right to life, there's so many things. Their constitution was an American constitution. It's not a Canadian constitution. We have our own, Magna Carta. Was that it? Magna Carta? Did you study history? I know it's Canadian. I think it's Canadian. The Magna Carta.
But what I wonder is what would our healthcare look like?
Yeah.
That's a big one for
Well,
me, right?
here's the question: is
What are we paying for now?
on a scale from
Yeah.
1 to 10, how do you rate the Canadian healthcare system?
To me, honestly, I put it at probably a 7. I don't think we're at a 10. I think we're at a 7. I think we could do better, but I just wonder if we made a switch like that, which would be very, very huge, what would it look like? What would the healthcare system look like now, right? Would we adopt their healthcare system or would they try and kind of, bring ours into the mix with theirs? I don't know. I don't know what it would look like.
I think in either case, we're heading in a more American-based healthcare system. I'd give our healthcare system a solid 4 overall. I'm very pessimistic on the healthcare system, and for sure, 100% not because of the people working in there. The frontline staff, the nurses, the doctors, administration, I think they're working at 150% of capacity. They're working very, very hard. I think the system is broken. It breaks my heart that somebody working so hard to help somebody has to follow a ridiculous procedure or protocol in order to just, administer a needle or give a medicine. And I always wonder, say, when something is free, is it really free? No, we're paying into it. And who else is the benefactor of that? Is it Big Pharma? I'm not sure. Pretty sure this episode is going to get canceled or taken off of YouTube one way or another. So do you really think that Elon Musk and Mr. Beast could buy TikTok?
I do think that's a huge possibility. I feel like anything Elon Musk brings to the table, talks about, has an idea about, he brings it to fruition and he kills it. I am a huge fan of Elon Musk. I read his book many years ago. I think he's great. And adding Mr. Beast to the mix, I think is going to give that little bit of flair. That's going to, yeah, I think they both can manage it properly. They have obviously the finances to do it. But I think maybe they'll even be more innovative and take it to the next level. So,
When I heard the headline, my first thought was, "No way, this is just fluff, right? News jacking." Um, but then I thought about it. I'm like, he actually bought Twitter or X, and I was like, when I heard that he might buy X, I was like, that's crazy idea. It would never happen, and he did. Um, I heard an interview with him on the Joe Rogan podcast, and what was really interesting was his methodology or thoughts of why he bought Twitter. And, he talked about the idea of freedom of speech and the fact that there's less censorship and ease of access for any single person's voice through social media, apps or programs like Twitter or X. Versus if we go back to the 1950s, the entire narrative was controlled by 6, 7 companies, whoever the big American broadcasting or big Canadian broadcasting companies. And then you bring that down, you're like, okay, maybe there's 10 people in control of the entire narrative of hundreds of millions of people. I'm talking North American based. But freedom of speech through social media, it makes it really accessible, right? I should say that backwards. Social media makes freedom of speech really accessible. And the idea of TikTok, it's an extension of Twitter. It's more video based. When we talk about why would they ban TikTok or why would, Elon Musk and Mr. Beast consider buying it? When you look at it being owned by a foreign, corporation, they can control the algorithm and they can control what we see. And I think that that's a really powerful thing when you can actually make people feel normalized because they're seeing things so often on social media. They can control the narrative of a whole country. And, something that I read recently was, a quote saying, in North America, we have 4-year terms in politics. We have a 4-year vision. And in China, they have a 100-year vision. So that really changes kind of what you're trying to do when you're looking at it in a 100-year window. What would the sale of TikTok look like 100 years from now, or what would the canceling of it look like?
yeah, yeah. To be honest, I think, and if this is correct, that Twitter was sold for 50 billion, or X, maybe with TikTok being one of the biggest platforms in the world, maybe they're close to 100 billion. Who knows? Who knows how
I
much
don't
it
know
could
how
go
they come
for?
up with the
But
valuation like on a
I
thing with
almost,
no advertisement.
I
Like,
almost feel like,
so what's more profitable? Short-term profits or
mm,
revenue or control,
in their case, I would say control.
you know?
Yeah,
Like, an example, I went to Crumble Cookie. Have you
yeah.
been to Crumble Cookie?
I have not, but someone gave me crumble cookie over the
Sounds
holidays,
like a
and it
nice
was
guy.
fantastic.
I went to Crumble Cookie and my kids, we had just come back from a trip and, they had mentioned it somehow, somewhere, and I just Googled it. It's like, I didn't know what it was. We arrive in, Pearson Airport, Mississauga, and I'm on the tarmac, and I just Googled, like, "Where is Crumble Cookie? Is it in Canada?" Of course, it pops up that it's on our way home. We had an amazing trip. It was a great experience, great family time, very memorable. They were probably more excited about going to Crumble Cookie because of like the cachet of it that we're going to Crumble Cookie more than the actual trip that we went on.
Yeah, the hype is real.
And we're waiting in line at Crumble Cookie and people were just, had to post on social media that they were there. And so you think about the control of social media. My kids had never seen a YTV television commercial for Crumble Cookie or never listened to a radio ad. It was only other people on social media, and it wasn't advertisements. It was just other people on social media.
The influence, right?
Yes.
It's how are these brands and these companies influencing other people? They're building the trust, they're showing them what they can offer them, and then it's repeated posting, repeated familiarity of the product, right? And keep repeating that over and over and over, and then you trust them. You have to be part of their life. That product, it has to be part of your life. So Yeah, it's, definitely influencing.
Yeah, just be sure to subscribe if you enjoyed today's show, or if you wanna make sure you never miss another episode, click on that subscribe button. We love your comments and love hearing what you thought. And if you have any ideas of upcoming episodes or themes you want us to discuss, we wanna be there for you. Thanks for your comments, likes, and subscribes. We'll see you on the next one.